construct a syllogism of the form EOO2. Any takers? Some of you whose homework I already did review turned out pretty nice. If you did make an error, it may have been a standard form error. In other words, getting the two premises out of order. So what should my first premise look like? My first premise should be no PRQ. Why? Because I said it was a what?
E statement.
That's an E statement, no P or Q. Now, my second statement's an O, so it should sound vaguely like what?
So we are not.
Yeah, it should be no P or Q, but I'm not allowed to use P again. Because remember, I need a what? I need that third term. And because it's second figure, I know it's second figure, and second figure means the middle term goes where? Yeah, the predicate of both premises. So I fill this in here. And then because my conclusion is an O, I can just go sum R. How do I know it's R that goes there?
Because the minor goes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because I know it's so I know that P and R have got to be in the conclusion. I know that this one goes here because, because it is the minor term. And the minor term is always the conclusion of the predicate. Or the conclusion, the subject of the conclusion. Sorry. I am awake. So that's what it will look like. Now, folks, I imagine some of you did not take the lazy way out. Does anyone know I took the lazy way out? And there was nothing in that question that said you couldn't take the lazy way out. Does anyone know what I am calling the lazy way out? Yeah, I use P's, Q's, and R's rather than filling in actual content. Because remember, all we're looking at for this categorical syllogism is the structure. I imagine a few of you decided to say, well, I got to make this thing valid. I've got to make premises that are true. Well, you spent more time than you needed to. And of course, some of you probably want to hit me at this point. But it taught you this valuable lesson about validity. Remember, validity is not determined by the truth or falsity of the premises. It's just a matter of the structure. So if I give you a homework where I say, construct a categorical syllogism with this mood and figure, you technically don't have to put in content unless what? Yeah, unless I tell you to. But yeah, I would have just taken the easy way out, which I did right here. This is an EOO2 syllogism. Now, I will tell you ahead of time that this syllogism form is invalid. I won't give you the full reasons why, because that will take what? That will take about half of a class period to explain, and we don't have half of a class period. That will be for Friday. But yeah, this one, without doing any work, I already know that it's invalid because it breaks one of the rules that is followed by every valid syllogism. Now this second one, it says construct an AII2 syllogism and explain why you think that is valid or invalid. Unfortunately, when the darn keyboard does a capital I, it looks exactly like a lowercase what? A lowercase l. More than one of you said, this says all. No, it's AII2 here. Now, if you didn't ask and you were a bit confused about that, I understand. I won't beat you up over it. But yeah, let's run through this one. Now, technically, does it matter where you start your syllogism? No, it really doesn't matter if you start with the major premise or if you start with the conclusion. Just as long as you do what? Just as long as everything else you do is consistent with your starting point. Now, I'm lazy. I'm going to start with the major premise here. We're going to go all P, R, Q. Now, since I already saw a second figure, I know that my middle term goes where? Here or here?
Q.
Yeah, it'll be Q. So my middle term will be here. And the reason why I know that it's some R or Q is because I statements always take the form some P, R, or some P or Q, some R, Q, whatever. Because I statements are, are particular affirmatives. A statements are universal affirmatives. Now what's my conclusion?
Some Q or R. I mean some Q or P.
Not Q, can't be Q.
R.
There. Because remember, each term is used twice but not in the same statement. So you know this one is it's in the minor premise, so it's got to be the minor term. So plop is, that is the subject of the conclusion. This is the major term, so that is the conclusion. So all just following a little cookbook, really, at this point. So that was, oh, now I hope you tried your hand at this one. It says, and explain why you think that it is valid or invalid. Now, we did not get to diagramming methods yet. You will be able to diagram this one for validity by the end of class Friday. By the end of class Friday. Now, did anyone try their hand at this one? Yeah, Hoover.
Well, isn't it because like the conclusion can kind of like be assumed before you even looking at the second statement?
What do you mean?
But like, I used a Venn diagram for it, and it's like, I believe in this case it would be P, like one of them wasn't filled in. Like if one's like not, I don't know, I feel like I'd have to visualize.
It is invalid. We will do a diagram of this on Friday. Well, unless I find out we have time today. This one is invalid. Now there was one trick that you technically already know for determining whether or not a syllogism is invalid. Remember the definition of validity. If a categorical syllogism is valid and its premises are true, then it's what? Then its conclusion will be true also. Now suppose we set up a syllogism that has true premises and we get a false conclusion. Any guess what you can know without a doubt?
It's invalid.
It's invalid. If your premises are definitively true and your conclusion is a definitively false conclusion, you can know that that structure is invalid. Because the definition of validity says, if it's valid and its premises are true, its conclusion will necessarily be true. That method for determining invalidity is what the professionals call the counterexample method. it would be just as convenient to call it a substitution method. Because that's in effect what you do. You substitute for these letters actual content that makes the premises true, and then you see if the conclusion is true or if it's false. If it turns out to be false, you can say without a doubt that it is invalid. So suppose we tried our hand at filling in content. All wallabies are marsupials. Well, actually, that's probably not a good one. Did anybody try any content here? Mr. Smith.
I did it wrong, but I just not thought of it like the way it's supposed to be. Like my original one had to do with books, so in this form I would say all books are read. Some works of fiction are read, so some works of fiction are books.
The one problem with that content, which I would caution you against, is I know people who have shelves full of books that they haven't what? That they haven't read. So you might want to be careful of those kind of premises just because they are not definitively true. All houses are things that have a structure. Some stories are things that have a structure. Therefore, some stories are houses. How's that one? I came up with that one on the seat of my pants. But it turns out that I would say that those premises are definitively true, but my conclusion is definitely false. This one is invalid. Now, the structural reason why it's invalid is because the way these two statements have the middle term configured leads to its invalidity. Now, not all figure 2 syllogisms will be invalid. As a matter of fact, many figure 2 syllogisms will be valid. It just turns out that AII2 syllogisms are invalid. It fails to what we call distribute the middle term. I can't expect you to know what that means now. That is for Friday. But I'm telling you right now that the failure of this syllogism will be called an undistributed middle term. Or to get fancy, they call it an illicit middle term. Illicit because it doesn't do what the middle term is supposed to do. It's supposed to connect the premises logically. This one fails. Now, is that okay? Your homework for Friday won't be any more difficult than this one. But at this point, guess what you have? You have more of the tools for getting it done. Hoover.
Well, I was.
I'm not quite. What's that?
Like you said, kind of like help me like kind of remember where I was going with that. Like how I did like the Venn diagram for that. It's one of, and I said like the conclusion can be like assumed without like the second statement. It was like the conclusion is like assumed or inferred, whereas like when it's a valid argument, you can actually like see the middle term. How you were saying that like you can see that it links because it's like explicitly stated.
Yeah.
Whereas like the conclusion is inferred, it's implied. Like you can't really like it's not there for you to figure out.
And I'll show you specifically what the diagram looks like if I have time today. Now, I'm actually going to start the diagramming process now, and we're going to look at more examples of diagramming on Friday. This is why I have no business even dreaming of giving you a quiz that requires diagramming until next Monday. I have no business giving you anything that requires diagramming until next Monday, because we won't have gotten through it until the end of the day on Friday. But I'd like to at least begin to show you roughly roughly how the Venn diagramming method works.